Welcome, friends, to the Someone Gets Me podcast. I am your host, Dianne A, and I am so delighted that you're here. This podcast was created because I believe there is a visionary leader inside each one of us who is waiting to be seen. In each episode of Someone Gets Me, you will hear useful tips from successful visionaries who will share their stories about how being seen has allowed them to take their vision out into the world with action. Welcome everybody to Someone Gets Me. I have an amazing guest around my kitchen table, and you are going to be so delighted to hear from him. Today we're talking about creating something bigger than yourself. That's right, as visionaries, we are meant to create something bigger than ourselves. And I have the only expert I know that is so amazing, and that is my good longtime friend, Chuck Bros. He has a lifetime of creating amazing things. He's a visionary like no others. Like I just told him off camera, he has more visionary and business skill in his little toenail than a lot of people have in their whole lifetime. He is a gifted visionary, a very successful man. But the thing that I love about him the most is his alignment to his heart and his soul and his mind. This man does everything I've ever seen you do, Chuck, is from that space of serving others and doing the right thing. So I'm really excited to have Chuck here with us today, sitting around my kitchen table, hanging out, and we're just going to chat with you about how to create something bigger than yourself, because sometimes that eludes people. So Chuck, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure being here with my best friend.
Yes, we have so much fun together. And how about telling everybody a little bit about your entrepreneur journey? I think you started when you were like 8 or something. And tell her a little bit, just give us a highlights of the story. Your story is fascinating.
Oh boy. Well, yes, I did start at 8. I started in Palm Springs, California, when it was a little tiny town, and it was more Indians and Spanish people than there was white people. And so it's been a long journey. Interesting. I started out with as a paper boy, and I bought a route, and it cost me $8.
$8.
And I bought the bike for another $8.
$16 investment.
I had to clean bricks and garden and everything else to make the $16 to buy my first business. And the interesting part about that, when I really realized I was more of an entrepreneurial person than I was just being somebody making a living or trying to carve out some in this case, my allowance, was that I probably wasn't more on my route that I bought for 4 months before I started realizing I got to make more money. And I needed to leverage myself, and there was an age limit, a minimum age to be on that route, 8 years old, which I was qualified. And I think I was probably a little younger than that, but anyway, said I was 8, so I lived that 8. And I had a couple little Mexican boys that were 6 and 7, that were brothers that wanted to get in the paper business. They wanted to make some money too, because it was during the war and it was tough times, and every penny or dollar counted, and mostly pennies. And but they couldn't make the age limit yet. They were not 8, and so I hired them. And I put them on the street corners in Palm Springs, because at that time it was a war, and we had military in the desert. We had Patton with his tanks out inside of the desert, getting prepared to take them overseas. And we had the Marines from 29 Palms, and we had Army and Navy and Air Force. So we had the whole, and of course they were filling up our restaurants and our bars and giving us a little revenue stream. And so I put them on the street corners selling paper by the paper, and I made 2 cents. I gave them 1 cent, so I split the money with them, and I now was making money from 2, and they were selling as much as I did on my route, so I doubled my income without having to work in there. And I said, I like this model. I like this really well. So I kind of grew that route. So I had 4 or 5 of them on the street corners. And then I took a real job and worked in the grocery industry, and I was the youngest person in the union. The one and only union I'd ever belonged to was that one. And I was a journeyman by the time I was 16, working and going to school full time. And I was still running little odd jobs with my Spanish boys and friends that were working with me. We had a little business all to ourselves, and it was kind of fun to doing it. But that went on to an interesting position. I won't get into all my personal issues with it, but I had to leave home at the age of 15, and I hitchhiked. Back then, you could do that and get away with it. Everybody stopped and gave you a ride. Those days are long gone. And I hitchhiked on my way to Los Angeles, but I was stopping on the way, staying in a little town, working to earn enough money to get to the next town. And so I worked in the roller skating rinks, and I did all the interesting things at 15. But I didn't have any place to live, so in these towns, so I was living like on the streets. And then I found there was a cement truck where they have these big trucks that mix up cement, and they had their big cabs in those things, and they left them open. Nobody robbed, especially trucks of that size. And so I jumped in the truck, and I slept in the truck, and I had my mindset to get up at 6 because I knew the workers came in around 7:30, 8 o'clock. And one time I overslept, and the drivers caught me, and they started saying, "You could keep sleeping here." They were bringing me food, and I started doing work for them on the side, and I started making. And finally, I got into Los Angeles, and I got a real job, and that was through the summer. So by the time I got it was time to enroll in school. And then I had the interesting experience because I had to sign all my papers as if I was my own parent, because I didn't have any parents to sign my papers. So I would sign the papers with my parents' name on it and give it to them. So I went all through school, and finally, after I was now all the way in the 11th grade, before they finally caught me. and I was working full time, making very good money. I was making full journeyman wages, and that was for that time period, it was a lot of money. And so I had extra money, and I started to invest in business opportunities. So by the time I was out of high school and graduated, I started opening up my first business, and I opened up a dancing school for children. I acquired a little business with some of the money I had. I think maybe I had $100 down or something, and I bought this business. And it was children dancing, and it was ballet and all the things and I looked at this business model, and they were barely scratching out a living, so I said, "There's no room in it for me. I got to make this business grow." So I developed the business to pick up children from school or from their home, and bring them to class and take them back. So I had a driver, and I hired women drivers, and they were generally mothers of children that couldn't afford to pay for the classes, so I traded off their services. Anyway, that was my business. Well, that grew so well, and I was the first to put in this mobile operation, and that grew the business up 500%. Unbelievable.
500%, wow.
And I then went to Monterey, California, in Los Angeles area, and I opened up my second studio, and I was 18. And by the time I was a little over 18, I was now running I had 1,000 students going to my 2 centers a day. And so I was making really good money. And so I had to do something with the money, so I wanted to go buy another business. And long story short, I started buying businesses that were in trouble. And then I would actually got smarter, and I started, instead of buying them, I started fixing them up, reorganizing them, letting them maintain ownership, and I would take a percentage of it, and I'd flip the business for them, and I'd grow them and get them, whether I was franchising them or whatever the marketing scheme was, I was doing it for them. And then I started doing that in every kind of business. I started getting people coming to me, and it wasn't very long before I decided I was really much into fitness then, much more than I am now, and so I wanted to build a health club, and I was working for the Yellow Pages for AT&T at that time. That was my always had a full-time job. Everything I did on the business was a full-time second job. So you manage to leverage. In fact, actually, that's when I finally learned to really leverage yourself, because you've got so much capacity in you. Why you need to grow that capacity with outside of yourself and helping others with it and bringing them into your life and building your expansion, your service, your goods, and you see the things that you could do great to help people. And so fitness center business became my next mission, and I opened up a health club. I built it from the ground up, and I had a call one day from a gentleman that said, "I'd like to buy your club." And I said, "Well, I think I would like to sell it." I had no idea, but if you want to buy it, I'm interested in selling it, because I'll go build another one. And that was my thought at the time. Anyway, the gentleman that called me and talked to me. This is a fascinating story. I mean, I could talk for hours about some of these stories. But anyway, this guy met with me in Malibu, and at that time I was living in Malibu, in California, and I had met this gentleman, and he had plans to build a European health spas. And older people my age would probably remember them, but they're still around today. He was building the first one, and he was building it about a big city aside from me out in Van Nuys, California. And so he wanted to buy mine, and we reached an agreement on the price. And he said, "But Chuck," he said, "I don't have the money cash to pay you up front. I have to pay you every week in cash. Can we do that kind of a deal?" And I said, "Well, I think I got to know you well enough. Yeah, I'll do that." Because I felt I had a good enough security with owning this club, I could take it back over and run it. So this was my first really big deal. I sold my first club, and he was paying me $10,000 a week. This was a long time ago. That was a lot of money. Yeah. And he was paying it to me in cash, which was interesting because he had reasons for that. And I would go down to his house on the beach in Malibu. We'd work out. He was a fitness nut. And he is Mr. Fitness in the United States. He has built he has some relationship with every club that has ever opened. If you've been a member of one, you were sending him money. He didn't know it. And so every Saturday I'd go work out at the beach with him, and we'd have our fruit and juices and all that afterwards. And he gave me an envelope full of $10,000 cash. And he did that every week until he paid me. Then he said, "You know, Chuck, I'm opening up a lot of these. I'd like to, what are you going to be doing for?" And I said, "I don't know, I'm going to go into some clubs." He says, "Why don't you go to work with me and be my partner and open up clubs for me and acquire them, and because that's your natural gift you have." And I said, "Right. God, I'd love to do that." So we made a deal. Anyway, I went across the whole United States, and we opened up and bought clubs, rolled them up, turned them around, merged them into the company, took the company public, took the finance company that we built to finance the paper of the company, right. Took it public, sold them both to New York Stock Exchange companies. At that time, there was a lot of them. Anyway, the long story short, that was a long history of building businesses and acquiring them and fixing them up, and everybody wins, and you grow your relationships. And the benefit of that is they always saw that whatever you did had to serve a purpose. The purpose had to be people. And what can you do to help other people accomplish things? And that not only is your personal reward, but it is your gift that you must do. If you're going to have the gift, you must use it properly and grow it. And so that's been the story of my life. And I could go on for hours, but we only have a short time here in this interview, so I'm going to shut up and let you ask me something.
Wow, I know, and just listening to that's just a little clip of the story from Chuck, and I know a lot of the story, but I always learn something new because, with the kind of depth of career and vision that you have, there's all kinds of things. So I have a question. During all of these things that you've created, have you ever struggled with people not understanding you? Like, you have a vision and you can kind of see what's going on, or you can see what to do, and then the people around just look at you like confused or don't know what to do. Have you ever had that kind of situation? Almost every time. So how do you handle that when somebody just looks at you like, I don't get it?
It's a kind of an interesting project that I created. I had to do something that would bring people to your picture. And you try to explain something to them, and you already have the vision of it, and they're not following you, right? They're not in your vision. And so I created a model I call kaleidoscoping.
Yes.
And I had the kaleidoscope the picture so that when they finally had a perfect picture, they said, we got it. And you can do that with everybody. It's just some people take a little longer, but you need to embrace them, and you need to embrace their family and everyone, because everyone that's part of them can help or make or break the situation. They're part of the picture, and you got to kaleidoscope that picture. So anytime I look at a transaction, I look at who is involved in the relationship with those people. If it's a husband and wife, and what about their children? What about their mother-in-law? What about their other people? Yeah. They impact them, their decision. And if you embrace that quickly and bring that into your kaleidoscope, you can bring them into your vision. And it's their vision now.
Yes.
And now you make it their vision. And when you do that, you have that kaleidoscope. It's perfect.
Right. That's a perfect word, kaleidoscoping. And I know that about you. You bring in everybody until everybody can see it. And I think Chuck has more patience than most people I know to help somebody see where things are going, or to help them understand things, because he has the ability to kaleidoscope. You came up with the term, but you also practice that all the time. And I have great respect for that. So kaleidoscoping, you heard it from Chuck first. Yeah, well, it's true, right? I mean, we all know the words, all of us who know you and are working on projects with you, because you use that phrase, but I don't know that regular people know that. And I think it's an important phrase, and I think it's a big part of your natural way, but it's also a big part of your overall success, because you have that ability. You don't discard things. You find a way to include things.
Well, one of the other things about kaleidoscoping too is that it gives you a way to determine the value of the parties that come into the table and what they can bring to the table, both in liabilities and value, because they have baggage that they bring with them, and they have assets that they bring in. And so in your early stage of kaleidoscoping, you're going to learn very quickly who you can bring into the picture and who really doesn't belong in that picture. And you never, ever, I don't believe in ever having a negative relationship. Even if the relationship doesn't come together in what you're trying to do, that relationship should stay with you and maintain a relationship with you forever. And sometimes they may be 10 years before you see them again or talk to them, but you'll be amazed, at least in my lifetime of experiences, that sometimes they come back around into another world, another picture, and they've grown to a level that you're now able to communicate on, and you can bring them into something else.
Right.
And they come back into your life. There's a reason for that. And most of them do. And so I try never to burn bridges.
That's really wise, right? Is to try not to burn bridges. I know so many people who are like, well, they don't serve my immediate purpose. See you later. And those people in the long run suffer. But we're going to get to the Home for Patriots project here in just a moment. But when we did our 2-day retreat, there were a lot of people there who've known you for a very long time.
Yeah.
And me being one of them, but people have known you longer than me, including your family. But it was very interesting because there was lots of different ways everybody knew each other and knew you, and how it all came together. And had you been one of those burn bridges type dudes, that would never have happened.
That's true.
It never would have happened. And the visions that you're creating today in your life, because Chuck's not done creating visions, by the way, the visions that you're doing now would never be happening.
That's true.
Not in the same way, right?
No, that's very true, because I think that, in fact, you hit on it. That's a good definition of what I was saying about things come back around.
Yes.
And so things move in a circle. I am absolutely convinced that things come in a circle.
Yes.
Everything comes around and goes around, and I think we all practice that to a large extent. I know people watching this too. And so when you learn that, to utilize it to your benefit in your kaleidoscoping, they come back around. And so like what you were talking about, our retreat, I knew what each of those pieces were and what their relationship was, and I could also know where they might fit 5 years from now.
Yes. And that's the visionary part. Like, it was after this retreat, a couple weeks after, we were having a conversation, and then it hit me like, oh, now I see all these other levels that Chuck was doing and seeing and watching and participating on without a word being spoken. Like, I started having all this awareness about some of the other levels, and I think that's another part of your visionary genius, is being able to manage all those different levels. So let's talk for a minute about Home for Patriots, because that's the current project, and it's a big one.
Yeah.
And it's a legacy project. And if you're really loving what Chuck is saying, we're going to put all his contact information in the websites in the show notes for you, so you can go check it out, because when this is airing, we will have already made more progress on this vision. So just understand that this is magical, okay? You're in on the conversation before too many people even know what's really going on. So, Home for Patriots, tell us a little bit about how the vision started, what it is, and what you would like to see. Like, give us the nutshell Home for Patriots vision.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It kind of goes to what we've been talking about, obviously. I lived in a place in Florida here that had a golf course that I don't golf, that I lived on, but I knew a lot of the people that did. And in the process of that, I came across some veterans, and they were starting a veterans group. And in that club, called Timber Greens Country Club, and they had 180 some veterans that lived in Timber Greens, and they wanted to start a club. Why, I'm not sure at the time, but they wanted to raise money in the club and help take care of local veterans, people that didn't have the ability to live in a country club, veterans that didn't have the results, veterans that are in bad shape, and a lot of them are unfortunately on suicide watch so much. And so we took on, and I helped start that group, and we took on sponsoring our first veteran, and we were doing a golf tournament to raise the money for it. And anyway, we got this veteran who was virtually came in off of the suicide line, and we picked him up, and fortunately I had a lot of background in being able to work in that area, so, and you and I know about that part of my life. And so we took, very successfully, we took this veteran, and we landed up getting him a service dog, and we trained the dog and the vet, and we did it with an organization that specialized in that, and it was so successful, and I walked all through it. I spent every moment with following that patient. And this veteran was so successful with his wife that he came back to us 11 weeks later after he was fully into his new dog and his new partner for life. He was totally a different person. He was getting up and speaking before the group. We had about 30 veterans in there that wasn't a dry eye in the room. I guarantee you there wasn't.
Wow.
I mean, to watch the success of it. So we did 2 more. We had 3, and they were all successful. And so in the process of that, I really started getting more involved. I said, I want to do this. I want to help. I want to figure out a way but I got to be practical also. I have to learn how do I make money doing it so that I can grow the vision and do more service.
You hear a theme here, everybody? You hear a theme, right? Okay. He gets involved in a club. It starts as a club. Okay, just making sure that if you listen to the beginning of this, you'll see the theme. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's right. I need a break between because they get me started. I won't stop. anyway, that blossomed where we started building how are we going to do this? Are we going to? I wanted to do a nonprofit, which I don't normally do. I've done a few, but I normally have always been a profit. But I wanted to do something at this time where I believed the world was ready for it, and that was to have a nonprofit operating beside a profit. So there are advantages to a profit center, and there are advantages to a nonprofit, and there are different reasons to have them, but they are, if you put them together, working together, the multiples of that are phenomenal. They're beyond my imagination even, which is pretty hard to get past my imagination.
Right, yeah.
But, and I don't mean that anyway, other than just I got a busy mind. I'm sure everybody out there does.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'm talking to that type of people that have already there. But the multiplications of that are phenomenal. But what happened in doing that, I started to doing all the homework that you have to do when you're starting something new. And in the process of that, I found out that veterans' suicide rate was 3 times the national rate of normal rate of suicide. That's unacceptable. That's just unacceptable to have that. And the cost of handling that is 10 times more than it is if we fixed the problem and saved lives and gave the quality. I mean, it was incredible, the numbers. But what was interesting, in the course of kaleidoscoping the project, I also found that first responders all had the same issues, all had the same problems. We're talking about policemen, all law enforcement, we're talking about paramedics, we're talking about literally a host of people. We got border patrols, I mean, we got military, we have
fire department,
we got paramedics. But now we can even tell by the current events that we have people rising to the occasions that are working at high risk in hospitals, with that they're just technicians, or they're this, or they're that in their occupation, and they're now heroes, and they're now rising to the occasions, and their suicide rate's going to go right along with that. And so when we examined all of that, we found that they all have a suicide rate 3 times the national rate. When you start to figure out what the cost of that is, going back to the practical side, the cost of that is phenomenal. To replace them, just being totally unemotional about it. So the cost to retrain, to replace, our government and our cities that are paying for that, and us as taxpayers paying them.
Right.
It doesn't take a giant to figure out what the solution is. You got to stop the suicide rate, bring it down, and keep the quality of that. If you look just in the first responders, and there's a lot of argument over these numbers, but there are over 100,000 people a year that fit into that category that are no longer here. 100,000.
So 100,000 first responders a year commit suicide, and your definition of first responder is somebody who runs in when everybody else is running out. Right. So now with this COVID-19, the first responders population just expanded exponentially. Right. And without some kind of intervention and support sooner than later, down the road, we're going to end up with, again, a bigger problem.
Yeah, because the problem is so exponential, it's unbelievable. Again, it doesn't take anybody to figure that out. If you have someone who commits suicide, their family is impacted, the cost to support that, the cost to reimburse that, the cost to replace that. That's the pragmatic side of it, right? But the emotional side of that is we're dealing with really broken situations that are just exponential. And by the way, those numbers, 100,000, somebody else might say 40,000. It doesn't matter what the number is. It's so substantial that it let's go get it resolved.
Right. The numbers are secondary at this point because it's so substantial. So Home for Patriots is the vision to help lower the suicide rate by both intervening in the end and also doing some things up front so people don't get to the suicide part. Right. So there's multiple levels of the vision of Home for Patriots as it all gets going and gets happening. And so what do you see the impact of Home for Patriots being in our culture, say, in 5 years? Or even a year. Let's do a year.
Yeah, well, a year from now, Home for Patriots will have a very substantial footprint in the nonprofit environment. And we will be building memberships. My experience of memberships comes into play because that's our fastest way to grow something and have a relationship with those people in the membership. So everywhere in the United States, and that's where we're putting our map down at this point, and we will put people on the ground in these different communities that are members that have a passion to be able to help. They're also going to become the eyes and ears in that community where they can find that person who's in need and catch them sooner so they don't commit suicide. Get them into the intervention of this. Get them into us so that we can then bring them into our base and put them into our programs. And as you know, the program is comprehensive. It's every application of life is implied in that. When we deal with that, we can't just deal with, okay, we fix them up. We have to be able to completely help them, including a career, including their family, including bringing people back together. And we have to be able to deal with a 360 degree of that person's human life. And what a wonderful feeling it would be, though. You know?
Yes.
I tell people, if I could just do one,
right,
I've accomplished my mission. Just one.
Right.
Because that multiplication alone will keep spinning. So, and then how that fits in a business model is that we take, all right, we're going to have the nonprofit help us put all of that together, but we need to have providers of services that come together in a holistic approach to taking care of that. And those are most likely going to be all profit centers. So we've formed a profit corporation to start to be able to do that, but they'll compete with already existing operations because there's somebody already doing something. We don't want to replace it. We want to bring it into a partnership with us.
Right.
But unfortunately, as you know, and our experience knows, we need to build a lot of it ourselves because it just doesn't exist. You have to build it from the ground. And then you can franchise them and put them together. And you can create that environment and create these circles that are just keep making bigger waves and more ripples. And then the next one takes over from that. And you put together a whole comprehensive program between the profit and the nonprofit. Obviously, all of the business experience that my partners and people that I've known for years, I want them, and they're still around.
Yes.
I'm outgrowing a lot of them, and I'm losing a lot of friends along the way that are making their transition. But there's still a few of us out there, like you and me, and people out there that can become part of this. We can make this work into a beautiful thing. But the wonderful conclusion to this thing is, in my senior life now, is the most wonderful way for me to make my transition is to get this running so that it leaves. I don't like the word legacy only because it's been used too much as a way of being a pat on the back or something.
Right.
I like to leave it on the basis that we created a circle of friends. You know.
Right, and that's why we titled the show Creating Something Bigger Than Yourself, because it's not just about this personal legacy, or people are starting to use that word a lot. It's really about the circles and the ripple effect. And when you come from a place of kindness and compassion and really wanting to help other people, and you put your skill set to it, which is what you've already spoken about, is bring it all together, then magical things happen, because we all have our own unique skills, we all have our own unique visions, we all have our ways to bring them together. So when we kaleidoscope it, something magical happens in that synergy.
We put all those tools into a toolbox, and then we can all draw from that toolbox, and then we kaleidoscope the opportunity and put the right tools together with it, and we have the perfect picture, and that's what we're doing. And have fun doing it too.
We're having a blast doing it, yeah. And so it's homeforpatriots.org is the nonprofit's website, and homeforpatriots.com will be the for-profit website. But all that will be in the show notes, so you can follow our journey. Because it's true, I've known Chuck for many, many years, and I hadn't talked to you in several years, and he found me through LinkedIn again. And then he told me about the project, and my only response was, I'm in. Not only because it's helping patriots and your definition of patriots, because I've been that first person in emergency rooms and rushing in when other people are rushing out. I've been there. And not only that, but I love how you can vision things, and so there's a foundation in the vision. It's just not some woo-woo dream. It's a vision that has substance to it, and those two things together are like, well, of course, this is like the perfect little project. That's why we're hanging out around my kitchen table talking about it. It's kind of fun, really.
Yeah, you have to have fun, because that's your release valve. And it also makes you feel good. But when you think of what we're going through now in the world, we didn't know about that when we started Home for Patriots. But look at the kaleidoscoping and the timing of what we're doing, because the greater being knows that we need to do this.
Yes.
And now there's even a greater need, because coming out of what we're going through, and we will come out, and I'm talking about the virus that has taken the world by total devastation in economics and life. But we're going to have the aftermath of that. There are going to be people that have had consequences from the fallout, where they're going to be, and we need to be there for them, and that's part of it. And so it's growing more than what we anticipated, and our needs are there, and so we need to get it moving and doing it at the right pace. It will happen. Right,
that's exactly right. The need is growing faster than we realized in areas we didn't know when we first started talking. So this is where being able to vision and expand and kaleidoscope pays off in a big way, because we can serve even better and more people. So I have a couple random questions. Are you in?
Fire away.
All right. What is your most memorable food that you've ever had in your whole life, with all your traveling and everything? And you think back, the most memorable food you've ever eaten.
Most memorable what?
Food.
Food?
Yeah.
Oh.
Most memorable
food. I thought that's what you said, but I wasn't. Really.
Like, where did she come up with that? See, I told you I was changing. Yeah. Moving.
Well, I think of food as probably more than just eating. I think of food for your mind and your brain and your soul. And I've had just so many. It'd be very difficult to pick just one thing and say. Probably my involvement with dealing with a company that was in serious trouble in medical research in cancer, and dealing with what we're going through right now, by the way. I mean, we're finding that the immune development, and this was an immune system program that was going through the FDA. They were broke out of money, basically, and they were in it for 12 years building this thing, and it was so phenomenal. And I was brought in our group, and we took basically over and recapitalized it, funded it, and took it through the FDA, and we had so much wonderful experience dealing with it, and then it's now moved on into greater dimension where it belongs. I don't normally stay more than a couple of years into anything, and other than now Home for Patriots, because this is my well, who knows? Maybe we'll find some
don't know where it's going.
Superfood that will do the job, keep me going a lot longer, keep us all going. And so that project was one of the most successful ones from a food, because I learned firsthand what it was like to deal with people that were stage 4 cancer patients that had gone through all the traditional trials of traditional medicine and had failed, and they were in 6 months or less of their life, and they came part of our trials, and it was breast cancer, and we had I'll never forget this, as long as I live, we had 27 women patients who had breast cancer. By the time we got them enrolled in the trial, we had lost 6 of them. We were down to 21 patients that started the trial, and we put them through our program, and we were able to save 19 of the 21 lives.
Oh, beautiful!
And you know, and they went on. I mean, some of them went back to work. I mean, their lives changed, and that company went on with a lot of struggles. It was very difficult. Probably the most difficult thing that I've ever done is trying to get trials through. Now with what's going on, all that is coming better. All that is the new releasing some of the lobbying things that have created these barriers to entry. And new trial drugs and everything now are going to be expedited, and so there will be a lot of side benefits really. And one of them is that kind of experience that I had, and I treasure that one. But I treasure so many of them that I really, but I have to say though, that one touched my heart the most, because I firsthand seen, and I firsthand worked I volunteered in a hospice for 3 years. When I was at the peak of my business career, I wanted to stay grounded. And I took the time off, and I spent working in the hospice dealing with the people in stage 4 cancer, mostly, and other diseases, but cancer. My patient in particular I dealt with was a Lou Gehrig's disease, a 34-year-old man that was devastated, a life career as a famous golf pro, and he couldn't talk, he couldn't anything, all the things that Lou Gehrig's disease does to him. It's
tragic.
And it kept me grounded. Sure. And I was so close to him, because we were together until he made his transition. And that was starting me into wanting to see how we could do more things that could bring new therapies and new things into reality faster and quicker, and eliminate some of the lobbying efforts that large pharmaceutical companies and things have created as barrier to entry to protect their existing products. And that's a project for our Army to solve, not one person.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's completely true. So I'm sure there's somebody watching us right now who's listening to you and being really inspired like I am. And so if somebody just has some ideas and they're just starting out, like they're maybe a young person, or maybe there's somebody who's already successful in one place and wants to really do some good in the world, what would you tell that new person who just has the idea? What would be a piece of advice that you would share?
Well, I would first of all, I would probably, if I liked what they were saying or doing, I would be willing to be a pro bono mentor to them. That's
beautiful.
That's because that's how you start new people into their vision and what they're trying to do. And I do that all the time with great gratitude, because I love helping people. You and I know a lady that we both just met, yes, that I think she's already asked if I would mentor her in her business opportunity, and I happen to know that business well. And I think we can be, and also I think she'll be a strategic partner in what we're going to be doing in the future.
Completely aligns with what we're going to be doing in the future. And so I think that's a really big message, right? To be willing to freely share our own lessons and values and how to help the people coming up behind us so that they have solid shoulders to stand on, so to speak, and having that giving consciousness, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, no question. I think the vision and the time is always now, because we only deal with it now. It's what we do today that makes everything important. And the days that are, the new day is just another day of now. So it's, we're dealing with it at that time. And when those people are first starting, you put them into the network and get them the resources to help them, their chances of being successful go up dramatically. And their life can improve dramatically. And you can save them a lot of bumps along the way.
Right. Yeah, I call that OPI, other people's experience.
Yes.
If we can share our experience and help out somebody who's just starting, and so they don't have to go through the same heartache, it makes everything better, because everybody moves faster. It oils the machine, so to speak. So I have one final question for you that I ask almost everybody on the show, because it's a fascinating question. And that is, if we could create a billboard that the whole world would see that has a message from Chuck Bros on it, what would it say?
Oh boy, a billboard, as you know, when you have a billboard, you can't have more than 8 words.
That's right. So there you go. Count them out.
Yeah. So I would have to say, help save first responders from suicide.
There you go. Help save first responders from suicide.
And what are first responders? Those that are running in when we're running out.
That's it.
And so reducing that down to 8 words is my billboard.
There you go. Yeah. That's a perfect billboard. Yeah. And you could probably have lots of billboards because of all of your visions. But thank you, Chuck, for coming over and hanging out in my kitchen and doing this interview with me, because I think that the message you share is really valuable for a lot of people. And I think a lot of y'all are being very inspired by him. I know I am, and I've known him for a long time, and I'm inspired by this conversation. So is there anything I didn't ask you that you wanted to share?
How many hours you got?
Okay, so that means we're going to have to do a round 2.
Yeah, we'll have to have another table. And I enjoyed the day coming over to see your beautiful home, and also meeting Maggie, who's just the sweetest dog, sitting there laying by my foot.
She's an angel dog.
Yes,
well,
yes.
Everybody, thank you so much for watching this episode of Someone Gets Me, where we're talking about creating something bigger than ourselves. And remember this. Keep your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you, because you're a rock star and you're here on purpose with a purpose. And this show is all about waking us up to go live our vision. And Chuck Bros, our guest today, has inspired me even more to go live my vision. And I'm sure you're feeling the same way. So hit him up in the contact notes and let him know you heard him on the show. And if you need any inspiration, just listen to what he has to say again and you'll be inspired again, okay? So until next time, everybody, be well. And thank you, Chuck, for being on the show.
My pleasure. It's nice meeting everybody.
Thank you for listening. I trust you gained some valuable inspiration and information. Please join me and other visionaries in the Someone Gets Me Facebook group. Or for more information on my services and additional episodes, visit someonegetsme.com. Again, thanks for listening.